Taoism is both a Chinese religion and philosophy. And we learn about it early in the year because it relates in some ways, in some very deep ways, to the Hindu religion and the Buddhist religion, both of which are very important in the book Siddhartha that you guys are all reading. Taoism is inextricably linked to ancient Hinduism, and scholars are not sure whether Taoism came first and were influenced by Hinduism, or the opposite, or perhaps both Taoism and Hinduism and their most ancient texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching were both influenced by a third text. At any rate, Taoism as a philosophy and a religion are both based on a single text, and it is the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching, or Jing. And it translates into the book of integrity in the way. And the way, or the Tao, is pivotal, vastly important, vital to most all Chinese philosophies. Chinese philosophies seem to all talk about the way. And the way may be different depending on your philosophy or orientation even within a specific philosophy, but it's essentially one overarching way of life. The Te here translates probably best into integrity. And here I'm using information from Victor H. Mayer, who created one of the most recent translations of one of the oldest or the oldest known text of the Tao Te Ching. And integrity essentially means the totality, and this is integrity here, the totality of a person's character, what guides them in every action throughout life. And integrity, I used an eye here as a symbol because the original Chinese character for integrity is an eye looking straight ahead, kind of focused, always in one direction, plus some lines that indicate movement. So essentially, always pointed in the right way, regardless of which direction you're traveling, so to speak. So the way is always guided by integrity. So, most important parts of Taoism for our purposes, and we're not speaking much of religious Taoism here. Although it's influenced by the same text, we're speaking mostly of philosophical Taoism and eventually into Taoism as a leadership philosophy. Taoism is a mystical philosophy teaching people how to be in touch with both the universe and the major creative force in the universe, God, if you will, in an Eastern sense, which is all-encompassing and everything. It's also a philosophy of leadership, which is what we're going to tend to focus on here. So you have integrity, this one way that guides us throughout life in all of our ideas and actions. Also important to Taoist philosophy and Taoist leadership philosophy is the concept of simplicity. And simplicity, essentially, and you see this in a lot of leadership philosophies, a lot of construction philosophies, a lot of philosophies about life and all things, and that is keep things as simple as possible. The more complicated things get, the more difficult your life is to live, the more complicated laws you have as a ruler, the more people are going to break those laws and more problems are going to arise. The Tao Te Ching is said to be by one person, Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu essentially, the Tzu is the master and Lao translates into old. And so it's by this person, old master. Now, most likely, scholars believe that the Tao Te Ching is the sayings of many old masters that were passed on orally, perhaps as late as 800 BC, before they were eventually written down. And so another idea of these old masters, I would argue, is that to be a good leader and to have a successful life in general, you must be flexible, be able to respond to different situations with different responses. You know, they say like a stiff board will break while a flexible reed will bend and survive. one particularly interesting concept in Taoism as a leadership philosophy is non-interference. And this is one that you oftentimes don't see in leadership philosophies. Leadership philosophies are oftentimes focused on the strength of a leader in making sure that people are going to obey the laws. And the Taoists take the opposite approach. And similar perhaps to a modern libertarian, they say that the less a leader does to interfere with the people, the better the lives of the people will be, and the simpler the rule will be. And finally, and perhaps in my opinion most interesting in Taoist philosophy, is in the way that they treat or argue that folks, leaders, should treat their people. And it boils down to keeping people fat, right? Keeping people well fed, keeping people happy, entertained, and then keeping people ignorant. Knowledge is not good, according to many of the poems in the Tao Te Ching, for a leader. The more people know, the more problems arise. The more people know, the more likely they're going to rebel. The more people know, the more likely they're going to be unhappy. And this is easily identifiable in modern American society by your stereotypical fat guy on the couch eating chips, drinking a beer, and we all know, what is he watching? 250 channels of satellite television, lots of sports probably. And so this guy, and we all tease him, but he is quite content. He has everything he needs. He has his entertainment and his television, he has plenty of food, and he doesn't have to know anything about the world around him, which makes it much easier for him to be happy. Now at this point I'm going to read you a couple of the poems from the Tao Te Ching, and one of the neatest thing about this book is it's very short. And so it can be read by almost anyone in a short period of time, but the knowledge that it contains is so deep, oftentimes contradictory, that you can read it 20 times, 100 times, and you can always find new information in the nuances of the text. So I'm just going to take a little bit of time and read you folks some of my favorite poems out of this book. So, to begin with, and this first one talks about integrity, the totality of a person's character. And it says, "The person of superior integrity does not insist upon his integrity. For this reason, he has integrity. The person of inferior integrity never loses sight of his integrity. For this reason, he lacks integrity." And so, what's the meaning here? The person who really has good integrity doesn't have to tell people about his integrity. He doesn't have to brag, and that's how you know a person has integrity. If you want to find somebody who has low integrity, according to these old masters, find the person who is constantly reminding you how much integrity they have. The person of superior integrity takes no action, nor has he a purpose for acting. The person of superior humaneness takes action, but has no purpose for acting. The person of superior righteousness takes action and has a purpose for acting. The person of superior etiquette takes action, but others do not respond to him, whereupon he rolls up his sleeves and coerces them. And what you see here is a hierarchy of values. The first being integrity, the second, humaneness, and you can see like kind of a debate here with Confucian ideas where humaneness is considered to be most important. The third is righteousness, believing that you are always doing the right thing. The fourth is etiquette, like simple rules to follow to make yourself believe that you're better than others. And notice the person who has etiquette and doesn't have all these other things has a lot of difficulty getting folks to do what he says, and therefore coercion is required, right? So the more integrity you have, the less you have to do. And so, therefore, when the way is lost, afterward comes integrity. When integrity is lost, afterward comes humaneness. When humaneness is lost, afterward comes righteousness. When righteousness is lost, afterward comes etiquette. Now, etiquette is the attenuation of trustworthiness, and this means to diminish. So the more etiquette you have, the less trustworthy you are. And etiquette then is the source of disorder, as simple rules for action indicate a lack of trustworthiness, or else you wouldn't need the rules. And this is what indicates disorder. Foreknowledge is but the blossomy ornament of the way and the source of ignorance. So the more you think you know in advance, the more ignorant you are about the actual way of doing things to achieve harmony. For this reason, the great man resides in substance, not in attenuation. He resides in fruitful reality, not in blossomy ornament. Therefore, he rejects the one and adopts the other. So you exist in reality, you exist in substance, not in etiquette, the diminishing of trustworthiness or the diminishing of integrity, and not in the blossoming ornament, right, that looks nice, but is unreal. Here's one that deals specifically with leadership. It says, "Rule the state with uprightness, deploy your troops with craft, gain all under heaven with non-interference." Again we see non-interference. How do I know this is actually so? Now, the more taboos under heaven, the poorer the people. What's a taboo? It's a rule of something you can never do. So the more rules you have, the poorer the people are. The more clever devices people have, the more confused the state and ruling house. So cleverness is bad, it leads to confusion. The more knowledge people have, the more strange things spring up. Knowledge is bad and leads to difficulty. The more legal affairs are given prominence, the more numerous bandits and thieves. The more law, the more crime. It's one of the first things they'll teach you in an intro to criminology course. What causes crime? Law. For this reason, the sage has a saying, "I take no action, yet the people transform themselves. I am fond of stillness, yet the people correct themselves. I do not interfere in affairs, yet the people enrich themselves. I desire not to desire, yet the people of themselves become simple as unhewn logs." So the less you get involved, the better the people live. And if you think about this in a historical context, for thousands of years before governments, people lived fine in family groups, governing themselves and providing for themselves, right? So truly there should be little reason for a ruler to get involved in the specifics of the lives of the people. And this is, again, about non-interference. When the government is anarchic, right? Anarchy, no government. The people are honest. When the government is meddlesome, the state is lacking. Disaster is that whereon good fortune depends. Good fortune is that wherein disaster lurks. Who knows their limits? So the more that we focus in our speech, in our minds, on ideas like good fortune, right, the more disaster we're going to have. And this is essentially when the idea of goodness creates the idea of badness, right? And without either, there's neither. When there is no uprightness, correct reverts to crafty, good reverts to gruesome. The delusion of mankind, how long have been its days? For this reason, be square, but not cutting, angular, but not prickly, straight, but not arrogant, and bright, but not dazzling. And so in here you have a real sense of balance. And the yin-yang, that passive and aggressive principle, is a Taoist symbol. And you see that idea of moderation, square but not cutting, right? So have an edge but not too sharp an edge. Angular but not prickly, have points but not ones that will draw blood, so to speak. And straight, leading a life of integrity but not arrogant, right? In the extremes lie the detriments to society. And here's one that deals again specifically with non-interference and what it takes to be a good leader. And it says, "Preeminent is the one," this is the leader, "whose subject barely knows he exists. The next is one to whom they feel close and praise. The next is one whom they fear. The lowest is one whom they despise." So if you want to be the best kind of leader, your subjects should barely know that you're the leader. When the ruler's trust is wanting, right, and wanting means that he doesn't have it, there will be no trust in him. So when the ruler does not trust, no one will trust him. Cautious, and this is the ruler, he values his words. When his work is completed and his affairs finished, the common people say, "We are like this by ourselves." So through through non-interference, a good ruler allows his people to make the right choices and create prosperity for themselves. And even though the ruler has a hand, an unseen hand perhaps, in this, the people believe that everything they do comes from within inside them, and then the ruler is successful. And here's one about keeping people fat, happy, and stupid, which are my words, by the way. "Not exalting men of worth prevents the people from competing. Not putting high value on rare goods prevents the people from being bandits. Not displaying objects of desire prevents the people from being disorderly." So, if you don't want people to compete with each other, don't make big ceremonies about people you think are the best. If you don't want people to steal, don't put high value on rare goods. And if you don't want people to create disorder, revolution, rebellion, fighting, then don't display things that everybody wants but only a few people can have. For these reasons, the sage, in ruling, sage, really smart guy, hollows their hearts, stuffs their stomachs, weakens their wills, builds up their bones, always causing the people to be without knowledge and desire. He ensures that the knowledgeable dare not be hostile, and that is all. Thus, his rule is universal. So, the only thing that a ruler should have to worry about, if he follows this line of non-interference and of keeping people with their stomachs full and their desires or hearts empty, the only thing he has to worry about is the folks in his kingdom that are knowledgeable are not hostile, are not violent, will not rise against him, and then everybody else will be happy. And these are the sources of my pictures. Thank you.